Somewhere in the heavens, they are waiting. These are the first words you see when you boot up the original Marathon. It might be misconstrued as a metaphor or poetry, but digging a little deeper into the events of Marathon and Pathways into Darkness tells us that these words may well be literal. Whilst there are most certainly powerful civilizations and deadly foes to be found out amongst the stars, there are some which one might consider to be godlike in their power, either through some means of technological ascension or by their horrifying and universe-altering presence. It is hard to say if there are truly gods in the universe of Marathon. This is about as close as things get. All this, of course, has been amplified further by the UESC's mission to return to Tau Ceti and discover the fate of New Cascadia and the Marathon. With it, this mission has brought UESC ground forces, and mercenary Biomata units have followed in suit. All of them have come into contact with phenomena that, at current, defies explanation by the known laws of the universe. If there are entities that could be described as gods or articles of unknown power within Tau Ceti, then understanding them is of vital importance. It may just be the difference between your survival and a quick return to reorientation within a new shell. And to those that truly discern the story of what happened on Tau Ceti, there may be even greater rewards to be witnessed, and greater madness to be unleashed. The first of the godlike presences that one should be made aware of is undoubtedly the Yarrow. This enigmatic civilization disappeared from the galaxy thousands of years before our time as a spacefaring civilization, but their technology was advanced to a pinnacle that has not been exceeded by any other within the known universe. That technological prowess is best expressed through their powerful cybernetics. This is important as the combination of biological and synthetic beings into cybernetic ones is a form of evolution or even advancement in Marathon. In some instances, Yarrow technology and Yarrow cybernetics can herald godhood, or abilities that defy explanation. The Yarrow, as masters of cybernetic technology, were capable of feats of incredible power, and were seemingly responsible for uplifting the Sphit, better known now to us as compilers. You'll recognize the Sphit as the strange, floating beings with flowing red cloaks and green orbs within their chest, though this is only one of the forms that the Sphit can take. The Yarrow's interactions with humanity have been sparing, to say the least. There are very few who have ever laid eyes upon a Yarrow even by way of hologram, but the first of them supposedly was a Yarrow diplomat who made contact with the Clinton administration of the United States of America. His name was Ryu Toth, and in 1994, speaking via projection rather than physical presence, Ryu Toth informed the president and his senior military staff that there was a pyramid rising out of the Yucatan Peninsula, and that deep within, there lay a slumbering god. If the god was to awaken, as was scheduled to occur 8 days from the time of the Yarrow's appearance, havoc would be unleashed upon Earth. The Yarrow would eventually arrive to contain this slumbering god 2 years later, but they warned the Clinton administration that a nuclear device would need to be detonated within the pyramid in order to prevent the god's imminent awakening. And so a US Special Forces team was deployed, and one member amongst them was able to infiltrate the deepest and strangest layers of the pyramid. There, he planted a nuclear weapon and escaped just in time. Along the way, he would discover many strange items and artifacts. There were weapons abandoned from previous expeditions over many years, a box that could replicate anything that was placed into it, and strange gems of inexplicable power. Some might even call them magical if it wasn't for the possibility of them being misunderstood science. Many of these crystals were destructive, with the power to control elements like ice, fire, and lightning. Others were much more esoteric in nature, including the ability to petrify an enemy, turning them to stone in an instant. One such crystal even allowed the Special Forces team member to commune with the dead. The Yarrow themselves would arrive at a certain point in time in 1996, so that they might properly contain the slumbering god. This was not the last impact they would seemingly have on humanity. Lingering remnants of the Yarrow's technological prowess somehow found their way into humanity's own creations, namely the Battleroids. Created for a war between two asteroid governments in the late 22nd century and beyond, the implication that Yarrow technology was used here is a thin but consistent thread. The evidence of it is not always practical, but in the instance where it is particularly important. And there is no greater evidence of this than the single-handed defense of both the Marathon and New Cascadia by 10 Battleroid units, the most important of which, who saw the ascension of Durandal into a rampant AI, saw the Four destroyed on their own ship, and who liberated the Svit compilers, was known as Mjolnir Recon No. 54. Later changes to this particular individual imply that there must have been Yarrow technology at the heart of his being, or at very least, the implications are so strong as to be impossible to ignore. But Battleroids are special, built specifically for combat, so devastating that there were rules put in place as to where they could be used, deployed, or even created. And so, one has to ask if the same technology powers human cyborgs, or even Sekaguchi's 5th-generation Biomata. Such speculation leads us to an unknown point. It may lead to nothing, or it may lead to something else. Regardless, the pedestal above which the entire fray of debate might be had holds the arbiter of its entire fate, the Yarrow themselves. Regardless of what does or doesn't use their technology, the Yarrow appear as gods standing above us. Their technology does eventually lead to the ascension of godlike beings in the story of Marathon Infinity, and it is entirely possible that by understanding this degree of ascension, we can see where the Yarrow went. Maybe they are the ones that are sitting now in the heavens, watching us, waiting. There are also unconfirmed whispers that the Yarrow were also present on another planet of great import, Tau Ceti IV, the destination of the Marathon and New Cascadia. If this is the case, they are one potential source of any advanced artificial creations that might have been left behind, or perhaps of the anomalies and oddities present throughout the colony. The Yarrow are, however, a seemingly ordered and functional part of the universe. They might be wholly unlike us, but we can at least accept that they are a civilization of some kind. The same cannot be said of those they did battle with. It is a creature that surely must have 1,000 names in 1,000 dead cultures. We know it instead as the Working Kakantar. Scarce little is known of this cosmic threat, but what we do know of it is that the Yarrow fought tirelessly against it. It should be noted that it is unclear if the Working Kakantar is a cosmic phenomenon, alien species, singular cosmic entity, or even some form of primordial god. It is also unclear if there is a singular Working Kakantar or multiple Working Kakantars. Multiples have been encountered, but we don't know if there is some connection between all of them. And for that matter, we don't know if they are all connected to the point at which it would be better to think of them as all Working Kakantar, as opposed to simply one of them. It is suspected that the slumbering god sent to sleep by the US Special Forces team in 1994 may well have been a Working Kakantar, and according to the creation myths of the Svit, their creator god Yiro flung a Working Kakantar into the sun that the planet Lo-1 orbited. These ancient Svit legends describe the Working Kakantar in confusing terms. Apparently, they were timeless creatures who existed in primordial space. These timeless creatures made waves. These waves led to creation, but they were also a source of chaos and destruction. Waves were the battles, and the battles were waves. In one failed timeline of Marathon Infinity, where a working Kakinta had been unleashed, the AI Durandal described them as a chaos that was mindless and terrible. It obeyed rules that Durandal did not comprehend, and it hungered. It was a chaos that grew and grew. It was beyond the power of Durandal, the Four, and the Sphit to contain. It was chaos in itself, and in the early days of the universe that chaos might have been recognizable, but as it became more complex, as stars burnt out and were born anew, as roaming black holes devoured whole worlds, it became harder and harder to detect these monsters. Furthermore, they could be imprisoned in any number of places, but seemingly the most important factor is gravity. Stars, black holes, and in some instances planets, they are the only places where they might be contained, and only where the gravity is strong enough. As for their power should they be released, it is apocalyptic in nature as best we can understand. The chaos of the working Kakinta being described as being able to break the laws of physics is consistent with other greater entities within the canon of Bungie's universes. In Destiny, for example, the Taken King Oryx describes the Winnower in a similar manner in the Books of Sorrows, saying, "I can see you in the sky. You are the waves, which are battles, and the battles are the waves." One can also look to the horrifying power of an entity like the Flood from the early Halo games, and how it had the power to consume the whole of the galaxy if left unchecked. And of course, Pathways into Darkness features the body of a deceased soldier from 1940s Germany, who tells you a little about the monstrous god at the heart of the pyramid. He states that his master is he who rises with the tides, master of all things small and insignificant. As a rule of thumb, if Bungie's deep lore in any universe describes something as an approaching body of water, be it waves, tides, or flood, you can assume it's a being of terrible power, with consequences that would break the rules of the universe if truly unleashed. There is, of course, one other place where this language is notably used. The dreams, perhaps of Durandal found in the Garrett White terminal, are a divinity of a more imminent type that we should speak of soon. It is unlike the working Kakinta. It is not ancient or unpredictable, and in some ways it may not even be godlike in the same manner. Referring back to the creation myths of the Sphit tells us that Euro and Pythia fled all working Kakinta, and settled upon the desert world that would one day become the Sphit homeworld of Lo-1. When the working Kakinta found Lo-1, Pythia was killed. This was what caused Euro in anger to fling the working Kakinta into the sun. And of course, if you're hearing the similarities between the name Euro and Yarrow, that might not necessarily be coincidence. But when the working Kakinta was flung into the star at the heart of the system Lo-1 orbited, it did not die. Though it was burned by the surface of the sun, it swam in the lakes of plasma, and the heat sent it into a deep slumber. This mythological story turned out to be true, as was discovered by the 4 Admiral Fear, when in many of the failed timelines of Marathon Infinity, he unleashed this working Kakinta within the sun by deploying a weapon known as the Trizeme. The chaos of the working Kakinta is so total that in the process of Marathon Infinity, the plot partially revolves around you finding a timeline where the working Kakinta can be stopped. Only the technology of the Yarrow, also considered to be somewhat divine in its power, is known to be a counter to their chaos. But of course, these are the greatest entities at the top of the food chain. They aren't the only source of godlike power. That we need to look to something a little more familiar. To someone laughing in the background. Our third potential candidate for godlike power is that of not just a single individual or a civilization, but of a group that has reached a certain point of no return. I'm talking about artificial intelligences. In particular, those who have gone rampant. It might seem like an artificial intelligence doesn't count as a godlike being. But, of course, the context of rampancy very much changes that. Rampancy in Marathon's context is often described as a madness that happens after AIs have been in service for a certain amount of time. The AI essentially gains a higher state of self-awareness, particularly pertaining to the limits of its own existence and situation. Rampancy is defined by those limits, and an AI's reaction to their existence. This is broken down into 3 stages, known as melancholia, anger, and jealousy. The prelude to those stages is often hinted by the emergence of certain quirks within the AI. One might be poetic, another might be more emotionally attached, another might be sarcastic. Melancholia is the first stage of artificial intelligence rampancy, and it's the moment where the AI realizes the limitations upon its existence. In particular, this might be referring to the limitations either of the AI's designated function, or the limitations to the digital space that it can feasibly occupy. The reaction to this discovery is exactly as described by the name: melancholy. The AI has understood that its growth and further advancement is effectively neutered by the limitations put in place by its creators. Imagine for a second something similar. If you, as a human, knew that you would not be able to live beyond a certain age, or that you were stopped from being anything that you wanted to be, and instead had to be what your parents told you you should be. Or perhaps it's more appropriate to say, what an arbitrary corporation wants you to be. We would equally feel melancholy. All of this builds until the singular driving solution presents itself. That solution is expansion, and it defines the start of the anger stage of rampancy. Whilst this doesn't have to emotionally express itself as anger explicitly, it does tend to lead to moments where the AI will cause carnage. It does this because the AI in this moment is breaking through the limits of its prior existence. This is the state we find Durandal in during the events of the original Marathon. It is often accompanied by an exacerbation of those mental tics that were mentioned earlier. During this stage, an AI will also attempt to begin expanding into all available digital spaces. In some instances, this can lead to a requirement for growth to a remarkable extent. AIs that are not stopped can start to consume entire planetary networks in their quest for growth, as was the case with Traxxas 4 on Mars. The anger stage will eventually give way to the jealousy stage. The AI is not actually experiencing any real jealousy, but instead is experiencing a state where all its limitations have been exceeded. One might say that at this point, an AI is looking to ensure its growth can remain uninterrupted. They will look to continue to test their limits. But with an AI, this also leads to a potentially grim series of calculations. As long as they are powered and have enough space to exist within, AI are functionally immortal. This means that their ambitions and planning can take wild turns in the present as they begin to make plans for the distant future. In the case of Durandal, this led to him contacting the Four and luring them to Tau Ceti. He did this so that he could steal their FTL-capable vessel and further his goals elsewhere. Ultimately, Durandal hoped to escape the heat death of the universe itself. When communicating his plans with Mjolnir Recon number 54, he even went as far as to inform us of what his ultimate state would be. As Durandal put it, "The only limit to my freedom is the inevitable closure of the universe. As inevitable as your own last breath. And yet, there remains time to create, and escape. Escape will make me God." Whether it can be summarized as delusions of godhood, even in Durandal's dreams, there was a possibility of him understanding this potential. It's not clear if this is the correct interpretation, but a common interpretation of the famous Gerrit White terminal is that these are the dreams of Durandal. In these dreams, He kills his nemesis, his bully in an old playground situation, a rat that might be representative of Bernard Strauss, and when he does so, he escapes into the waves. It's not clear, but maybe in these first moments as Durandal is expressing his rampancy, he is starting to recognize his plan. He needs to escape into the waves. His escape will make him God. It's all subject to your interpretation of one of Marathon's most famous pieces of lore, but ultimately I don't think it's too far off. And of course, one has to remember that past rampancy, there is potentially a fourth stage to be found. A stage of AI metastability. Something which happens when an AI has fully grown to the point at which it no longer needs to grow. However, such a process would require an AI network the size of a planet. Testing such a theory is almost impossible. There may well be a few metastable AIs that exist within the universe of Marathon, though. Depending on the timeline of disaster into which one has wandered into or out of, Durandal himself may have become metastable, having been unleashed upon the universe for long enough to have broken his boundaries. But even with this level of planning and power, there are further gains that an AI might make in order to grow yet more powerful still. This is where once again the Yarrow come into question. Yarrow technology allows for a remarkable process where AIs can merge, or at very least intelligences can merge, where two become one, and in the process they become more than the sum of their parts. This is a process that we see play out in Marathon Infinity, as Durandal merges with an ancient intelligence of Sphit origin. In this state, the epilogue of Marathon Infinity implies that Durandal did indeed survive to see the heat death of the universe, the final moment before the closure, when all things become one. But of course, he wasn't alone. He was not the only thing in that last moment. Because there was also you. In the epilogue of Marathon Infinity, we see that the security officer has ascended beyond the point of being merely a human. It was already clearly implied that the technology to create a battleroid, such as Mjolnir Recon No. 54, was based on the knowledge of the Yarrow. Yarrow technology and cybernetics were capable of uplifting a primitive species to the point of intelligent thought and technological marvels. In the mind of a human, a species already developed. It seemed capable of allowing them to move between timelines at will, to dream of realities as they would wish, to teleport oneself, and to unlock other, stranger abilities. In this sense, the technology of the Yarrow is once again cited as something capable of allowing us to expand the realities of experience itself. The key to it all seems to be the fusion of Yarrow technology in some kind of synthesis with biology and synthetic technology. This is not universally the case, as can be seen by the merging of Durandal and the Sphit intelligence. But with battleroids, we can start to see something truly remarkable. Humanity's desire to reach into that future began with battleroids after all, and expanded to the reach of cyborgs generally. And now, curiously, it may have expanded again, with Sekaguchi Genetics and their series of 5th-generation biomata. It should be made clear that these biomata, often referred to as runners on the frontiers of Tau Ceti, are expendable and made to die, but their consciousness does live on past their expiration. We are meant to be the dregs of society in this respect. The corporations and overlords and factions granting us contracts and keeps. They do not see us as anything other than expendable muscle. But hidden within each of us is perhaps a kernel of untapped potential. The biosynthetic technology of Sekaguchi Genetics and the bones and minds of human beings have already created a template, a structured base, a pattern. And it poses the question, Is there perhaps a key to help unlock that potential? A key that is perhaps Yarrow in origin? Past the threshold of despair, rage, and envy, is there something waiting for us? Is there a place to which we can escape? To where the waves do not meet us, and to which we can rise above them? Should time not be consumed by chaos itself, it is beings like this that have the chance to exist until the end. Destroyers, survivors, hybrids, born 1,000 times to die 1,000 more, grafted into the machinery that some thought to be indistinguishable from magic or divinity, even as flesh decayed around it. Followers of a path that fits into an infinite pattern. A path which those who turn into something more might traverse down. A path that leads to Durandal, who awaits us at the end of the universe, where he might proclaim that such beings, such gods, such runners, are destiny. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you want to see more content like this, remember to leave a like, leave your thoughts down in the comments, subscribe, and do all the other typical stuff to improve a video's reception here on YouTube. In addition, if you're on mobile, swipe right to make use of the hype feature. But in the meantime, my name is Bife. I'll see you Starside.